The rapid expansion of Napoleon's empire was made possible through the tactics, strategy, and morale of the Grande Armée, who conquered much of Europe like wildfire in the early 1800s. At the vanguard of this force was a brotherhood of horsemen, men who lived and died in the saddle and carried his empire forward on a tide of steel and hooves. Each and every last one of these men were incredibly bold, courageous, and capable. So you can only imagine the spirit and character of the men who rose to the top to inspire and lead this force. In this video, we will tell the tales of 5 of these legendary men, each remembered for their courage, brilliance, and bold cavalry charges that shaped history. Together they were the spirit of the Napoleonic Cavalry. Marshal Ney, the bravest of the brave, Napoleon's right-hand man who was loyal to him till the very end, and led from the front in what would be the final doomed Napoleonic cavalry charge at Waterloo. Murat, the marshal whose flamboyance was only exceeded by his courage and daring, a man who led one of the largest cavalry charges of all time through the snow at Eylau. General Antoine Lasalle, the dashing and likely insane hussar general and spiritual leader of the light cavalry, whose accomplishments and charisma inspired morale to soar in the Grande Armée. Jan Kozietulski, the Polish officer who led the charge through the pass at Somosierra and became a great hero of Poland. And Marshal Bessières, a close friend of Napoleon from an early age whose discipline and strategy helped ensure victory at Austerlitz and Wagram. This is all the Emperor's men, the legends of the Napoleonic Cavalry. If you want to catch more videos on Napoleonic legends like this, be sure to quickly subscribe to our channel, like this video, and let us know in the comments what you want to see next. There are hundreds of similar videos in our history playlist. Marshal Ney. Marshal Marshal Ney was a cavalry commander whose courage was the stuff of legend. Napoleon himself said Ney was worth 1,000 men on the battlefield. He was a large, stocky, red-haired man with the piercing eyes of someone who had seen death and didn't flinch. Ney was the one Napoleon called upon when impossible things needed doing. Born in 1769 in Saarlouis, France, Ney rose from humble beginnings to become one of Napoleon's most trusted marshals. Unlike the flamboyant Murat, Ney's heroism was raw and relentless, forged in the heat of battle and proven time and time again in the most desperate moments of the Napoleonic Wars. Ney first distinguished himself during the Revolutionary Wars, earning a reputation for fearlessness, audacity, and unbreakable resolve. His soldiers adored him, for he was always at the front, charging into danger alongside them, sharing their risk and their glory. Napoleon valued Ney not only for his bravery, but for his ability to inspire men to follow him through fire and death. At many of Napoleon's most famous and legendary battles and victories, it was Ney's leadership that turned pivotal moments into triumphs. In 1804, Napoleon made him a Marshal of France. In the 1807 campaign, Ney arrived with reinforcements just in time to save Napoleon from a crushing defeat at Eylau, turning the tide and providing the opportunity for victory. Later in the campaign, at Friedland, Ney commanded the right side of the line, and his relentless attacks pinned the Russians in place until Napoleon could unleash his victorious blow. At Borodino, amid the inferno of cannon fire, Ney rallied broken units again and again, his coat torn, his face blackened with gunpowder, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. But it was at Waterloo, in 1815, that Ney's legend and tragedy fused. Commanding repeated mass cavalry assaults against Wellington's infantry squares, Ney led by example, charging from the front. Not 1, not 2, but 5 of his horses were shot out from under him that day, but he remounted and rode out again and again. At one point, he fought on foot, saber in hand, covered in mud and blood, still urging his men forward. But the British infantry squares held, and Ney's gallantry could not turn the tide of the battle. Ney's brilliance lay in his audacity. Sometimes reckless, always bold. He could seize the moment and turn desperate situations into opportunities. Yet his courage occasionally led him into overwhelming danger. His life was a series of charges, sieges, and battles, where personal bravery met strategic command, leaving a legacy of heroism that inspired both allies and adversaries alike. After Napoleon's final abdication, Ney remained loyal to the emperor. When captured by the restored Bourbon monarchy, he faced execution for treason. True to his fearless nature, Ney confronted his fate with dignity. Standing before the firing squad, he reportedly declared, "Soldiers, I am a Frenchman. I have fought 100 battles for France and never won against her. This will be my last order to you. When I give the command, fire." Even in death, Ney embodied the courage, loyalty, and honor that had defined his life. Marshal Marshal Ney's life was lived without restraint, fearless, relentless, and tragic. His bravery on the battlefield and his unwavering devotion to France made him one of the most legendary marshals of the Napoleonic era. Do you believe that Ney deserves to be ranked at the top of the list of Napoleon's greatest commanders? And what do you think his final words reveal about the truth of his character? Antoine Charles Lasalle. General Antoine Lasalle, the Hussar of Hussars, was cavalry distilled into human form, reckless, dazzling, and brilliant. Lasalle was born a soldier. His father was an officer in the King's Royal Army before the days of the French Revolution and was a Knight of the Order of St. Louis. Lasalle lived by his own saying, "Any hussar who is not dead by 30 is a blackguard." And he nearly kept his word, dying gloriously at the head of a cavalry charge at age 33. His incredible accomplishments in life will allow us to forgive him those 3 years. Lasalle distinguished himself in 1795 in the War of the First Coalition at the Battle of Rivoli. With just 26 horsemen, Lasalle rode out bravely, charging towards the Austrian line. This daring feat caused an entire battalion of the enemy army to throw down their arms and flee in panic, allowing the French to capitalize and rout the enemy's center. Capturing a single flag was the type of accomplishment a cavalryman could boast about until the end of his days. That day, 11 enemy flags were captured, 5 of those by Lasalle himself. After the battle, all the trophies were piled up before Napoleon. Lasalle lay exhausted a few feet away on top of his 5 flags. Napoleon said, "Enjoy your sleep on your flags, Lasalle, for it is well deserved." Lasalle would be a glorious sight and a larger-than-life character in the campaigns of the Grande Armée thereafter. Lasalle's feats were the stuff of legend. At Stettin in 1806, with only a few hundred hussars, he bluffed a fortress garrison of 5,000 Prussians into surrender, simply by riding up, demanding immediate capitulation, and threatening to unleash an army which didn't exist. The ruse worked, and the fortress fell without a single shot. At Wagram in 1809, Lasalle led charge after charge against the Austrian lines. True to form, he was in the thick of it, saber flashing, his pipe clenched between his teeth. His final moments came in a storm of musket fire, and was cut down while rallying his men. Napoleon, on hearing of his death, lamented, "A man like Lasalle could not be replaced." Lasalle's life was one long charge at full gallop. Duels, gambling, drinking, and women off the battlefield, lightning raids and impossible victories upon it. His men adored him, his enemies respected him, and his end came exactly as he predicted. In the saddle, leading a charge, a comet of a man that burned through life, hot and fast. Today, a statue of Lasalle gallops into eternity at his birthplace in Metz, France. While he didn't live long enough to become a Marshal of France, Napoleon has said he absolutely would have received this honor, but was gone too soon. His name is memorialized with all the great legends and soldiers of the Napoleonic Wars on the Arc de Triomphe in the center of Paris. General Antoine Charles Lasalle is known as the epitome of the legendary, romantic, brave, and brilliant cavalryman of the Napoleonic era. What do you think motivated Lasalle to live the life that he did? Was it duty, honor, glory, loyalty to Napoleon and France? Or was it perhaps just simply the love of the game? Joachim Murat. Joachim Murat was one of the most flamboyant of Napoleon's cavalry leaders, a man who looked like he'd galloped out of a painting. His uniforms blazed with gold embroidery, sashes, and plumes so tall they seemed to scrape the sky. But Murat was more than showmanship. He was the master of the great, thunderous massed cavalry charge. Napoleon once called him the bravest man in the world. Murat was at Napoleon's side in the earliest days, requisitioning the artillery that Napoleon used to put down a royalist uprising in Paris with his famous whiff of grape shot on 13 Vendémiaire, 1795, an event which first made the young General Bonaparte's name a recognizable one. Both men were in their early 20s. Murat was Bonaparte's personal aide-de-camp for the early Italian and Egyptian campaigns, by the future emperor's side for every part of his meteoric rise. Napoleon valued him as the perfect cavalry commander, fearless, aggressive, and able to electrify men into charging headlong into fire. Murat became one of Napoleon's closest companions in those years, and even married Napoleon's sister, Caroline Bonaparte, in 1800. After Napoleon's coronation, Murat received the rare distinction and honor of becoming a Marshal of the Empire. At Eylau in 1807, with the French army reeling in a snowstorm, Napoleon unleashed Murat. Leading some 80 squadrons, over 10,000 horsemen, Murat hurled them forward in one of the largest cavalry charges in history. Through the blinding snow, they smashed through the Russian lines, wheeled, and crashed back again, buying the emperor precious time to stabilize the field. Murat's men adored his fearless presence. He was always in front, saber raised, plume flying, impossible to miss. Yet his brilliance came with recklessness. At times, he ignored Napoleon's orders or overextended, dazzled by his own dash. Later, as King of Naples, his loyalty wavered, and he broke from Napoleon in a desperate bid to save his throne. Captured after a failed uprising in 1815, he faced a firing squad with the same fearless energy he had shown in battle, commanding his executioners, "Soldiers, do your duty. Aim for the heart." Murat's life was a cavalry charge from start to finish, brilliant, reckless, and doomed. Do you think Murat was one of Napoleon's best cavalry commanders, or was he too flamboyant and reckless to be trusted with independent command? Baron Jan Kozietulski. Jan Kozietulski was a Polish officer in Napoleon's service, remembered for one act of daring that etched his name into history. Born in 1781, Kozietulski grew up in a Poland divided by Russia, Prussia, and Austria, a nation that had been erased from the map. Like many of his countrymen, he placed his hope for independence in Napoleon Bonaparte, whose victories promised a restored Polish state. Kozietulski became an officer in the Polish light cavalry, the Chevaux Légers, renowned for their speed, precision, and fearlessness. When Napoleon's forces were stalled at the Somosierra Pass in Spain on November 30th, 1808, Kozietulski's courage would be tested like never before. The Spanish had fortified the narrow mountain pass with 4 successive batteries of cannons, making it nearly impossible to breach. The French infantry had failed. The road to Madrid remained closed. Napoleon turned to Kozietulski and his 125 men. Whether the emperor intended them to charge all 4 batteries or only the first is unclear, but Kozietulski knew what had to be done. At full gallop, he led his men into the teeth of grape shot and cannon fire. Horses fell, men were cut down, yet the Poles pressed forward. Kozietulski himself was thrown from his horse, injured, and handed command to Captain Jan Jawanowski, who continued the charge. Even as officers fell and horses were killed, the survivors pressed on, capturing each battery in turn. Within minutes, the once impenetrable pass was taken and the road to Madrid was open. Napoleon marveled at the feat, saluting the survivors and declaring them worthy of his old guard. The charge cost 2/3 of Kozietulski's men, but it secured one of the most audacious victories of the Napoleonic Wars. Kozietulski was awarded the French Legion of Honor after the battle. Kozietulski remained in the military and distinguished himself at the Battle of Wagram, where he led his Polish cavalry unit against other Polish cavalry units fighting alongside the enemy Austrians. For his merits, in 1811 he became a Baron of the Empire. During Napoleon's invasion of Russia, Kozietulski again distinguished himself as a skilled commander during the Battle of Malo-Yaroslavets, where he saved the life of Napoleon by himself, charging between the emperor and assaulting Cossacks. Kozietulski would continue to serve with distinction, but it was that single, blinding charge at Somosierra that defined his legacy. Kozietulski's life reminds us that heroism is not always about grandeur or showmanship. Sometimes it's about courage, resolve, and the willingness to face the impossible head-on. At the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Warsaw, the words Somosierra 1808 honor the bravery of Kozietulski and his men, forever immortalizing the moment when a small band of Poles changed the course of history. Kozietulski's story was one charge from start to finish, daring, relentless, and unforgettable. Kozietulski is remembered to this day as a legendary figure in Polish history. To learn more about Kozietulski's legendary day in Spain, check out our video about the cavalry charge at Somosierra. Marshal Jean-Baptiste Bessières. Jean-Baptiste Bessières was a commander of the cavalry of Napoleon's Imperial Guard, and was one of his most trusted lieutenants. He was the calm, disciplined counterpoint to the dashing Lasalle, a man of quiet courage, unshakable loyalty, and exceptional skill in the art of cavalry warfare. Born in 1768 in Prayssac, France, Bessières rose to become one of Napoleon's most trusted generals, admired not for show, but for his steady hand and precise command. He could be relied upon to protect the emperor in battle. Bessières first proved his mettle during the Revolutionary Wars, serving with distinction in the Army of the Rhine. His calm leadership and tactical acumen earned him the attention of Napoleon, who valued reliability and discipline as much as daring. By the time of the Italian campaigns, Bessières had become a cornerstone of Napoleon's cavalry, commanding his men with a mix of rigor and quiet authority that inspired absolute confidence. Bessières' steadiness earned him the title of Marshal of the Empire in 1804, a rare honor reflecting Napoleon's trust. In 1805, at the Battle of Austerlitz, Bessières played a decisive role. While Murat led his thunderous charges with flamboyant energy, Bessières coordinated the heavy cavalry with surgical precision, striking at the enemy flanks and exploiting gaps in their line. His leadership turned carefully calculated maneuvers into devastating blows, demonstrating that cavalry power could be more than spectacle. It could be lethal strategy. He continued to serve with distinction at campaigns from Ulm to Eylau and Friedland, always present at the front but never reckless. His presence reassured his troops. They knew that when Bessières commanded, order and discipline would guide them through the chaos. At Aspern-Essling, Bessières led the Guard Cavalry in a furious countercharge that saved the army from destruction. In Spain, he directed cavalry operations with a mix of restraint and decisiveness, showing that courage was not only in bold charges but in knowing when to hold and when to strike. Unlike Murat's audacious flamboyance, Bessières' brilliance lay in the balance of risk and strategy. He embodied the disciplined backbone of Napoleon's cavalry, the steady hand that could carry victory when raw courage alone would falter. Bessières' career ended tragically in 1813 at the Battle of Lutzen, where he was killed leading a cavalry charge. Even in death, his men remembered him as the ideal commander, courageous, disciplined, and unwaveringly loyal to the emperor. Jean-Baptiste Bessières' life was a testament to the power of steadiness in war, disciplined, decisive, and heroic. A master of the cavalry who proved that not all legends need to blaze with showmanship to leave a mark on history. Which of Napoleon's finest soldiers should we cover next in All the Emperor's Men? Let us know below and be sure to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We have over 100 Napoleonic videos in the history playlist on our channel. Our favorites include the cavalry charge at Somosierra, Admiral Nelson's last stand at Trafalgar, and Napoleon's cavalry, the last knights of Europe. Check them out and let us know what you think. Until next time, I'm Connor with the Motion Visual. Vive l'Empereur!